I frequently show these illustrative examples of campaign structures that you can effectively use, but some of the feedback I've been receiving is that I jump right away to these complicated structures like the one I'm showing right here without going through the basics of how I arrived at this point. So we're going to take a detour and take a step back and review campaign structures from the ground up so we can better understand them and, as a result, better understand how to build effective structures. So let's really start with campaign structures in their most basic form. Every campaign on Facebook ads is comprised of three parts: the campaign, the ad set, and the ad. And it is a hierarchy, so visualizing it and conceptualizing it this way does tend to make sense. Now the campaign sits on top, and that's the first thing you create, and the ad set and the ad live underneath or within the campaign. So at the campaign, when you create one, the first thing you're prompted to do is to select an objective. So the campaign is where you decide your objective. It's also going to soon be where you decide your budget if you're using campaign budget optimization. Now, this is going to be mandatory across all Facebook users at some point during 2020. So it's worth noticing that the budget is being set up here. And then you will be selecting the bid type. So what I mean by this is you'll be selecting whether you want to be doing manual bidding or lowest cost bidding or value-based bidding, etc. Now, down to the ad set level, which lives underneath the campaign, there's certainly a lot more that happens here and a lot more decision making that needs to be done. So that's everything from the audience, so selecting the location, the age, gender, interests, demographics, etc., to the budget. So if you're not using campaign budget optimization, then you're setting the budget at the ad set level, to the placements that you're going to be running. Now, I generally recommend running automatic placements, but if you do choose to customize it, this is where you do it. So if you decide you only want to run on Facebook or you only want to run on Instagram, this is where it's done. The schedule. So if you are setting a budget here, you would be telling the system how long you want your budget to last. So whether it's a daily budget or a lifetime budget, when it should start, when it should end. And then the optimization and delivery controls. So these are things like how much you're willing to bid for an event, what type of a Facebook pixel event you're optimizing towards, so on and so forth. And then underneath the ad set is the ad. And sometimes you'll just hear people say the creative, but basically the reason for that is that this is where the creative elements come in. So this is where you're putting a video or videos or an image or multiple images. And you're also selecting a format here, whether it's a carousel or collection or simply a video. You're choosing the format at the ad level. Also, you are selecting the destination. So it could be a URL. You could be directing someone to a website, but you might be directing someone to Messenger as well, or you could be directing someone to an app. Here's where you also write your copy, or in other words, the text that goes in your ad, and you're selecting a call to action. So that's everything from sign up to purchase to learn more. So there's a lot that goes on in each of these three steps of the hierarchy. I also have a chart here on the right, which sort of breaks it down a bit simpler. And this, is a diagram of what a campaign could theoretically look like. But it won't be very effective, generally speaking. And there's a reason most campaigns are not this simplistic. Well, if you're running a campaign, you also probably want to be testing out audiences. So it's not enough to have just one ad set, but you might want to have more than one ad set. So let's look at this example here. You have the same campaign as before, but you have two different ad sets. And I've highlighted in red, let's suppose here that you wanted to test out two different audiences. So you created two ad sets, and then this was the variable, and you held everything else equal. Now in practice, you might want to have more than two ad sets. Most of the campaigns I run have between 5 and 10 ad sets in them, and I am toggling mostly audience, but occasionally I am using these other elements as variables between ad sets. So now we have a bit more of a complicated campaign structure where you have one campaign, two ad sets, but still only one ad under each ad set. So now you might be thinking, well, if we're going to be testing out different audiences, why can't we be testing out different ads? And you should definitely be doing that. So here's another illustration of what a campaign would look like one step further. So you have your one campaign where you have your objective, and then you have two audiences or two ad sets, and then under each ad set you're testing out two different ads. Now, generally speaking, what you want to change here is the actual creative itself, the video or the image. But you could create variations based on anything here. You could different formats, different destinations, different copy. And for my campaigns, I will generally have between 3 to 7 different ads running underneath each ad set. And now's probably a good time to talk about how Facebook delivers. So based on your objective, Facebook will be testing out between the two ad sets under the campaign to get you your objective at the lowest cost. But if one of these is better than the other, you're not going to see 100% of your budget go there. So there is an optimization that occurs where Facebook is balancing and taking advantage of different proportionality between the ad sets. So that's what we call optimization. And the same sort of principle exists at the ad level. So these two ads are optimizing between themselves, or you could say that they're competing against one another to find the best ad variation that will deliver within this audience that will achieve the campaign objective. And the same thing will happen on the right here. But similarly, you're not going to see 100% of the budget all go to one winning ad because Facebook's constantly optimizing, it's constantly adjusting, and in some cases, ad one might be better, in some cases, ad two might be better. So it's good to give the system some control here and let it optimize for you. The alternative is to be doing a lot of manual optimization, and I've just seen this from my time at Facebook that, time and time again, humans are not good decision makers when it comes to rebudgeting. Let's put it in the hands of the machine learning algorithm and let it dictate that for us. So we're starting to arrive at a point where our campaign structure is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to introduce you to something that I like to do with my campaigns. And most of the top advertisers I've worked with tend to follow a similar model where you split your campaign structures into two. So all I've done is I've duplicated that campaign I just showed you into two exact replicas. But campaign one, we'll call it your prospecting campaign, and campaign two will be your retargeting campaign. Now, another way you may have heard this be called is warm versus cold audiences. So the basic idea here is splitting up into two campaigns, having one campaign that's responsible for your first interaction with a potential customer. And the second campaign is your retargeting campaign. This is everything beyond that first interaction. So whether it's called your cold campaign or your prospecting campaign, that's the one on the left. And then the warm campaign or the retargeting campaign, that's the one on the right. A few of the reasons that you might want to break these out are as follows. Number one, your audiences are going to be very different in terms of size. Your retargeting campaign is often much smaller than your prospecting campaign, which is, theoretically infinite. These are people you've interacted with, and that's a finite number. Another reason is that you want to maintain budget and control. So let's assume you have one campaign and you're throwing everything under it. Your cold audiences, your warm audiences. Well, the budget, as we know, is set at the campaign level. So that means you're giving the system control to optimize between your cold audiences and your warm audiences. And in some cases, this can work. I don't think that in principle, there's anything wrong with it. But most advertisers like to control how much they want to spend between their cold and warm. So, for example, with most of my businesses, I generally have about 70% of my budget go towards prospecting and about 30% of my budget go towards retargeting. So now we're at a point where we have campaign structures that are a bit more complicated, and I think I can go into some of the examples that I frequently use. This here is an illustrative example of how you might want to structure your e-commerce campaigns. So you have one campaign on the left, prospecting, and one campaign on the right, retargeting. Under your prospecting campaign, you have 4 ad sets or 4 audiences. And you could add more than this. I just don't want this slide to get too cluttered. The first one could be an interest-based audience, so targeting people based on their interests. The second one is a lookalike of your purchasers, and this will most likely be a very high-value audience for me. Number 3 is a lookalike of people who added to cart but didn't purchase. So this gives me a bit of scale to work with when I'm prospecting. And then the fourth one is a larger lookalike. So now we're choosing a 3% lookalike instead of 1%, but we're layering on interest to get it a bit smaller. And then under each of these ad sets, I have 3 ads all competing against each other or optimizing between themselves. And on the right, we have my retargeting campaign. Again, conversion objective, budget at the campaign level. And then I'll have ad sets that are very different here. So these are people that have had an interaction with me in the past or with my brand. The first ad set will be people who added to cart but didn't purchase. The second one will be people who visited my site. The third one will be an email list that I've been collecting, but you can replace this with something else if you don't have an email list. And then the fourth one will be, I'll be retargeting anyone who's watched at least 95% of the videos in my ads. And then again, we'll have 3 or more ads competing against one another under each of these. So this is a e-commerce example with actual physical products, but it's very simple when we move into a service type business. Like, for example, if you are collecting leads, then the same principles apply. So in this case, you have your prospecting campaign, your retargeting campaign. The only thing I've changed at the campaign level is now we're running lead objective. So we're instructing Facebook, find me the cheapest leads, given my budget and other constraints. And again, we have the interest target. Ad set 2, something I changed up here is now we're going to use a lookalike of the people who actually submitted leads instead of a lookalike of people who purchased. And then we'll have another one, which is a lookalike of people who opened my leads. And then we'll have a broader lookalike with interest layered on. My retargeting ad sets look a bit different as well. I'll be retargeting in the first ad set everyone who opened up a lead but didn't submit. And then if I happen to also have a website, I'll use that second ad set to target the site visitors. Again, I'll be leveraging an email list to retarget here and video view watchers. So now that we broke down the foundational aspects of how a campaign is formed on Facebook and we understand why we need a more complicated campaign than just one ad set and one ad, I think we can now start to apply these principles towards building more sophisticated campaign structures that deliver us business outcomes efficiently and effectively.